So I've gone through the original Fright Night movies, and if you're a fan of those movies, you might be curious as to why the first one teased Evil Ed, played by Stephen Jeffries, as being a possible antagonist in a sequel, only for it to just completely pivot and go into a whole different direction that involved Jerry Dandridge's hot-ass Cuban sister. Now, I actually said the reason that Evil Ed wasn't in Fright Night 2 was because Stephen Jeffries chose to pursue a career in gay porn, and while he would get into gay porn, that's not why he wasn't in Fright Night 2. He opted not to return for Fright Night 2 because he was offered the lead role in the movie 976 Evil. 976 Evil is a relatively low on the radar horror movie. Like, some hardcore fans know about it, but it's kinda just like low rent, and that's because it's not particularly good. There are a lot of positive aspects to the movie. I think it's got some good to it, but all in all, it's very I would say it's probably only a movie of interest if you are a fan of 80s horror, because it was an attempt to make Stephen Jeffries a horror star, and it was Robert Englund's directorial debut. Production notes are scarce, but the movie is based on a screenplay by Rhett Topham and Brian Hedgeland. It's Hedgeland now. Hedgeland had previously written the screenplay for A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 and would go on to write the screenplay for LA Confidential, a movie that would win Best Adapted Screenplay. So you can literally put on the box for this that it was done by somebody who won an Oscar. I can't really find any info on how Robert Englund found himself directing this because there's nothing on Wikipedia. I can't find any real interviews or documentaries on the movie, but if I had to guess, they had a horror movie that was not a big franchise horror movie and figured, hey, if we put fucking Robert Englund's name on it, people will think it's something like Nightmare on Elm Street and they'll go see it. Or perhaps he just wanted to direct a movie, but either way, like, you know, the sad thing is they plaster Robert Englund's name all over the fucking advertising for this movie.
From director Robert Freddy Krueger, Englund, comes a terrifying new film.
Huh, that's really fucking weird. I didn't know that Robert Englund's legal middle names were Freddy and Krueger. This is all just done out of some pathetic desperation to get people to see the movie, because, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were still kinda hot. Like, it was dying down, it was the late 80s, but they were still hot. So it's clearly just a parasitic attempt to use Robert Englund's name for clout to get this movie over and to get people to go see it. The problem is, 976 Evil quality-wise is nowhere near even, like, the worst of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Which begs the question, why the fuck didn't they just let Robert Englund direct a Nightmare on Elm Street movie? It's like they couldn't have done any further damage to the franchise. 5 was pretty lame. Besides the motorcycle scene, that was pretty fucking awesome. And as sad as it may be that they fucking bill him as Robert Freddy Krueger Englund in an attempt to get people to see this movie, you know, thinking it's gonna be like a Nightmare on Elm Street type movie, it's not nearly as shameless as the Phantom of the Opera 80s movie that actually just has Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger on the fucking poster where Freddy Krueger is nowhere to be found in the film. Like, bro, that's fucking bad. On paper, you would think this movie would have been somewhat of a hit because Stephen Jeffries was really well received as Evil Ed in Fright Night, and Robert Englund was really popular as Freddy Krueger. Like, this is a match made in heaven. Horror fans should have flocked to see this. The problem was this movie was shot in 1988 and did not see a release in the United States until 1989. So that's 4 years after Fright Night, the same year that Fright Night 2 came out, which was not a success. And to further add to this, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, which were the big horror franchises of the 80s and likely were the pace-keeping franchises that kept the genre as a whole going strong, were starting to decline. A couple years before this came out, it probably would have been a modest hit, but now, like, horror was on its way out. It was done. Nobody really cared anymore. And Stephen Jeffries was like a full-ass adult with this movie. Like, in Fright Night, yeah, he was in his early 20s, but he still looked like a teenager. But yeah, by the time this movie came out, like, Stephen Jeffries did not look like a teenager anymore. He looked like he was a man in his mid-20s, which he was. I'll get more into that a little bit later, but I guess what I'm getting at here is this is a movie that was produced by New Line, who were likely hoping to get as much out of the horror genre as they could, because at this point the writing was on the wall. Like I said, even the big 2 horror franchises were starting to have problems in terms of box office. This is one of those movies, I'd been hearing about it for like a couple of years, but I didn't even really watch this movie until a few months ago. It just never really interested me. Like, yeah, sure, it had Evil Ed in in it, but like it didn't look particularly good. And so I watched it a couple months ago, and then I kind of rewatched it for this video. Like I skipped through it because it's somewhat fresh in my mind from a few months ago. But like up until this point, all I knew this movie for was being the movie that prevented Stephen Jeffries from returning in Fright Night 2 as Evil Ed. And now I know that this was one of only 2 movies directed by Robert Englund, but going into this movie, I had no real idea what to expect. And I didn't really expect much out of it, but what I found was a movie that I was able to appreciate and even enjoy in some ways, even if I didn't particularly like the movie, if that makes any sense. It's one of those movies where if somebody was like, oh, I've never seen that movie before, I'd tell them that it sucks, but if they wanted to watch it, I'd be like, yeah, alright. So the basic premise is that in this world, there's a 976 number you call, and it gives you a sort of dark fortune or horoscope, and then you keep calling the number and it prompts you to do bad things. And if you don't follow through with the bad things that they ask you to do, you get haunted by the phone number, and when you outright refuse for the final time, you get killed like the dude who blows up at the beginning. It's a pretty silly concept, but the idea behind it is somewhat interesting. It's unique. And of course, we see what happens when somebody refuses to follow the line, but we kind of get to learn what actually happens if somebody follows through with it. For those who don't know, the 976 number, and I am probably going to fuck up and call it a 967 number a couple times throughout this review, is a premium phone service, which was eventually dropped in favor of the 1-900 number. But realistically, looking at this movie, it's very similar to Evil Speak from 1981, just with a premium phone line, and Evil Speak itself is just like a male version of Carrie, so this is kind of like Carrie. It's Carrie, but with a few twists and turns and a male protagonist, and it's not really all that good. So Stephen Jeffries plays Hoax, a weird nerdy kid with an overbearing religious mother who looks up to his cousin Spike, who is your standard cool guy who clearly watched The Outsiders or Rumblefish in the 80s. It's like that greaser throwback like Kevin Dillon from the Blob remake, but not as cool. The way Hoax looks up to his cousin Spike is like endearing, but it's also kind of cringe. Like for example, Spike has a motorcycle that he rides to school. Hoax's imitation of that is riding a shitty moped with a goofy helmet. I think the main reason why this doesn't come off as endearing and why it fails to make Hoax sympathetic is because Hoax probably should have been played by a younger actor. Like I mentioned this earlier on, but like Stephen Jeffries was like 25 and he looked like he was 25. He may have even looked a little older than 25 here. There are times where it's like, oh, there goes the hairline. They really try to dress up like a 25-year-old Stephen Jeffries as like this awkward teenager, but like, I don't know, man, like his skin doesn't look the same, and it's just like, it's just a fucking grown-ass man. There are points where it's actually just kind of unsettling how like they dress fucking Stephen Jeffries up as a kid, but it's just so very clearly a 25-year-old. I'm sorry, it's just like, this is actually like really funny to me for some reason, I don't know why, but anyway.
You better not be eating on my sofa, boy.
I'm not, Mama.
For fuck's sake. Like, it's almost self-referential that they have, like, a 25-year-old who looks like a 25-year-old playing, like, I'm guessing Hoax is supposed to be, like, 15, 16, maybe. And what's even sadder is Pat O'Brien, who plays Spike, is actually 2 years older than Stephen Jeffries, but he certainly looks more the age that the character of Spike should be. Like, I picture Hoax being 15, 16. I picture the Spike character maybe being, like, late high school, like, 18, 19, maybe he's on like a victory lap, like second year of grade 12, however they do it down there. Like pushing 20 when in fact he was like 28 here, but he looks more like a 20-year-old than Stephen Jeffries looks like a teenager, despite the fact that he's obviously supposed to be older in the movie. Whereas Stephen Jeffries looks like the fucking Steve Buscemi 30 Rock meme. But the general idea is that Hoax is like a weird introverted kid, and he really looks up to his cousin Spike and just wants to be cool like him. If anything, there's a little bit of resentment that Hoax has towards Spike because he can't be like him, but that kind of builds up over the film. At the start, he looks at Spike kind of like a cool older brother, and he's always kind of trying to gain his approval, and Spike's like not a dick to him or anything, but you can tell Spike's just like being nice. And the reason Hoax is the way he is a combination of his overbearing Christian mother and the possibility that he's like autistic or something. Obviously, it's the late 80s, I didn't really know what autism really was, but looking at the Hoax character and the way he acts and how he kind of misses on certain social cues, it's like he does seem kind of autistic.
Oh my God, man! You scared me!
I scared you?
Why are you going around sneaking around, huh?
I don't know. Sorry.
And it doesn't help that he gets beat up at school a lot. Like, Spike does stick up for him when the local skater punks pick on him, but when Spike's not around, he just gets it worse. So we get, like, the opening and then a later cutaway scene where it shows the 976 number's effects on people, and then Spike discovers the line. And he calls it when he goes to buy some motorcycle gloves, and the line tells him to steal the gloves. But Spike, despite being your average bad boy, is a good person with principles and doesn't go through with stealing the gloves.
Hello.
A real man has the nerves to take what he deserves.
What is this bullshit?
A real man has the nerves
Fuck you.
Which then kind of has like a car almost run him over because of the hotline. That's kind of like, okay, so there's something wrong with this hotline. Which then brings him into the radar of a detective who is investigating the random phone-related deaths. But before that, Spike hits on a really hot blonde chick that Hoax has a thing for. I just want to say, like, women's late 80s fashion was just built different. Like, she's wearing clothes, but the outfit itself may very well be one of the sluttiest outfits I've ever seen. The skirt barely covers anything, the top is thin as shit, she's clearly not wearing a bra, and like the outfit looks so obnoxious in general, but since the actress is really hot, I will allow it. The character of Susie is played by Leslie Dean, who appeared in The Girlfriend from Hell as well as Freddy's Dead, and this was her first film role. What I've seen of this actress, I do like her. She was decent in Freddy's Dead, and she's okay in this, but her acting roles kind of just slowed down like many horror actresses did in the 90s, but she was also a musician in the band Femme to Femme, which toured with 9 Inch Nails in the early 90s, and she has played roller derby, and now she helps run a non-profit music camp for girls, so she's done some good shit despite not really having much of an acting career after the 80s and early 90s. And she also gets naked in this movie.
Hey, where you going?
I'm mad. And when I'm mad,
I eat.
One of the things that makes me believe that Hoax was probably based on early perceptions of autism is the fact that he's weird, but he doesn't quite understand that he's weird. To him, his weird and awkward personality is just normal because he's obviously very repressed, he's obviously, like, doesn't have much of a social life, and having an overbearing Christian mother has probably made things worse. And it's very obvious that he's very sexually repressed. This is made very obvious because after Spike bangs Susie, Hoax sneaks into the room and steals her underwear for himself. But he also calls the 976 number, which tells him to pursue the girl of his dreams, who is literally walking around with a few cc's of Spike dripping out of her, so, like, ew.
Your problem's not nearly as bad as it seems. Just take in a late show and meet the girl of your dreams.
Everything kind of sets itself up for Hoax, like Spike ends up being a dick to Susie while he's gambling with the weird little group of skater kids, which, like, okay, I'm gonna divert here. What was the process of writing these skater characters? Like, they're obviously supposed to be bullies, but they run the theater, they have, like, this gambling ring going on, and earlier we see them just, like, taking lunch money off kids, like they're, like, an organized crime group. It's fucking stupid, but it's kind of funny.
Okay, now don't forget every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, okay? You can eat lunch the other 2 days. Okay? Don't pout. I'm doing you a favor. A real big favor. Hit it.
Anyway, the leader of the Skater Mafia is played by the guy who played Biff's friend Joey Skinhead in Back to the Future. One of the other skaters is played by an actual pro skater, Jim Theobald. And then there's this tall, dumb-looking skater who, like, looked really familiar, but I couldn't quite put my finger on who he was until I looked it up. And then I was like, oh my god, that's Dweep from Married with Children, one of Kelly's friends from, like, an early episode that just, like, he has this one line that just always stuck out to me when I rewatched that show.
Dweep just got out.
Human life means nothing to me.
Marcy.
Anyway, after Spike is a dick to Susie around the skater kids, she walks off and runs into Hoax, who's being weird and following her, but she actually takes the time to get to know him, and they start to form sort of a bond over pizza. And this is kind of a looking up moment for the Hoax character. Maybe he's gonna mature, maybe we'll see some growth, maybe the 976 line will actually start to do him some good at first. We might actually get to see him get the girl, despite the fact that there's a distinct possibility his cousin fired off a fucking load in her.
Tales from the cock.
The two are having a good time, talking to each other, eating pizza. She's afraid of spiders, and we see earlier on that he has a pet spider, so he's just like cool with spiders. And all of it is going well until the bullies show up and just start beating the living shit out of Hoax for like no reason. And then it turns out he had the girl's underwear in his pockets, which gets revealed by the bullies and completely blows everything.
Get up! Fucking bitch!
I thought you were different.
So he gets rejected by the girl, he gets put in a dumpster by the bullies, and Hoax calls the hotline again, and basically he decides to use black magic to kill this poor girl with spiders. So yeah, this is a direction where the film kinda just ruins itself. Even if Hoax looks like a man in his late 20s, the idea of the character is that he's weird, he's awkward, he's underdeveloped, and he's socially stunted. I could suspend the disbelief that he's a 25-year-old man if it was done right, but they completely fuck it up here. They try to make him sympathetic at first because he's getting picked on and he starts using the 976 number to get even with the bullies. This is something we're supposed to cheer him on for, but because he goes ahead and kills the love interest right away, even though he regrets it immediately, it just kind of ruins the character. Because like, he wasn't justified in doing that. Like, yeah, she rejected him, but that's because she was weirded out that he was just like hoarding her fucking underwear. Like, she gave him a chance and was nice to him, and yet she's the one that gets fucking lashed out at first. I personally would have played the relationship bit out a little bit more, like maybe have Hoax actually undergo some of his initial transformation while in a thing with Susie. It's obvious that throughout the movie, the more he uses the line and the more he follows what it tells him to do, the more he transforms, which they kind of drop off a little bit, but it's implied. But like, what if it's like a little bit more drawn out? What if he actually starts to become the person that he wants to be at first before becoming a monster? Maybe they give his mom more of an extended role in this. Maybe there's some more conflict with Spike in him. But not, instead he just like kind of kills her and we don't really get any follow-up on something that could have maybe made the movie a little more interesting. Like, maybe we could have had Hoax start to go after the bullies first, kind of get the audience on his side because he's getting revenge, only for him to like go over the deep end when she starts to kind of think he's gone too far, and then he kills her or something. Like, obviously they were trying to fake out the whole romantic interest thing here, and they do subvert expectations, but that's not always a good thing. Essentially, having Hoax kill the girl right away just kind of makes him an asshole. They could have just kept the character a little sympathetic for a little bit longer and maybe played on this, but I don't know. Maybe the writer of LA Confidential isn't that good of a writer, and maybe Robert Englund isn't that good of a director.
Crazy, man. Fucking crazy.
I'm gonna acknowledge the fact that the detective has a little side piece going on here, but it's really not that important. What's important here is the story with Hoax and Spike, and after Hoax kills Susie, we get some tension between him and Spike, and he completely goes off the deep end during an altercation with the bullies in the bathroom, when he grows demon claws and slashes a dude's face open.
You, man. Oh, shit, man. He fucking cut you. He cut you so bad, man. Fucked your face, man.
The only thing of any sort of importance with the detective storyline is while he's investigating the deaths, he finds out that the hotline is ran by a guy named Mark Dark, who's played by Robert Picardo. And then he gets a whole thing with the principal of the school, but like, all this B-plot literally just serves as nothing but a little bit of exposition and filler, because this movie is like a soft 90-minute runtime and it really needed to pad itself out. At its core, the story is about a weird introvert who is jealous or envious of his cousin. Spike is cool, Spike is respected, and he can stick up for himself and get the ladies. Hoax is picked on, he's weird, women don't like him, and he also proves that by actually going out of his shell, he does have likable traits, but he just blows it because he was weird, and then he ends up killing the girl. The core concept of 976 Evil is interesting enough. The concept of a phone hotline that tells you to do evil things and rewards you with powers for doing so is actually a really cool idea. But every single aspect of this concept that the movie plays, they play it completely wrong. As I said, we should be cheering Hoax for going after the bullies, but he just kinda killed a girl for no reason. The movie starts falling apart in the middle, and then like the pieces that fell off of the middle fall apart in the last act. Hoax completely transforms into some demon creature and kills all the bullies and drops a bunch of one-liners.
Bye.
Okay.
And then he kills his mom, who, like, yeah, she's annoying and she's kind of mean to Hoax, but, like, she doesn't have enough fucking screen time in the movie for us to really feel good about this. So it just kind of feels empty, and then he kills the parrot for some reason. So then, you know, they have to wrap this movie up. So Spike, the detective, and the principal of the school for some reason confront Hoax, and Hoax has turned the house into a demonic hellscape. While Hoax killing all the bullies at their movie theater hangout is obviously the highlight of this movie, the end isn't so bad. It is kind of neat, even if the movie has fallen apart by this point. Hoax has turned the house into a demonic hellscape, and we get a pretty good callback to earlier when Spike roughs up Hoax for saying that he killed Susie, with Hoax telling Spike that he's gonna one day be in the position that Spike is in.
One day soon, you're gonna be down here and I'm gonna spit on you.
Yeah, when hell freezes over, asshole.
And now at this point, Hoax, possessed by Satan or some sort of demonic entity, turns the house into a hell frozen over and echoes the line back at him.
Guess what, cousin? Hell finally froze over.
We do get a little fake out here, like Hoax is about to kill Spike, and Spike manages to appeal to the fact that Hoax looks up to him and just wants to be his friend. And then it turns into a whole nah, he's too far gone thing, and Spike throws him out the window into a pit of fire. And then the movie just abruptly ends with a shot of Mark Dark with photos of all the souls he's collected, with Hoax in there. This movie isn't good, but I was able to enjoy it the first time I watched it because the idea was there, it just was not executed very well. It had a good hand, it just didn't know how to play it.
Hey, where's Rags? What are you, deaf, you little faggot? Where's Rags?
Would it be possible to enter the game with a pair of hearts?
As I mentioned, the Hoax character should have been a lot more sympathetic up to the final act, but they decided to just have him kill Susie for some reason. And it would have actually made the movie a little bit more interesting if the Susie character stuck around. They could have delayed her finding the underwear and being weirded out by him, or they could have just not had that in there at all. Like, what the fuck? They started the whole movie's plot with a major fumble, and they just kept fumbling and fumbling. Because after that, it's like, you can't really cheer on Hoax that much, because it's like, he already killed this girl for no reason, so now he's killing the bullies, but it's like, well, he's an asshole. And it's like, yeah, we should pity the character, but it just doesn't quite have the impact that it could have if it was played better. And yeah, at the part at the end where we get to see some of Hoax's former personality come out and Spike tries to talk him down is a little pitiful. It isn't a badly done scene, but it would have been a lot better if Hoax's transformation wasn't so instant and if we got more of a chance to actually get to like the character. Because when they start him off, they make him a little too awkward and too weird, and they kind of don't make him likable enough to the point where you would actually feel sorry for him here. It's really hard to find out who to blame for this movie. Like, I could maybe blame the writers, or maybe Robert Englund just isn't a good director. They managed to take a near bulletproof concept and botch it in every conceivable way. I find it hard to really blame Stephen Jeffries for this because it's very clear he's just like acting the way he was told to act. And the character of Hoax is basically like Evil Ed if he had an overbearing Christian mother and was like very like mid-functioning autistic. He's playing the character like Evil Ed, but the character itself isn't really like Evil Ed at all. They could have played it a lot differently. Most of the other characters are pretty flat, and this was meant as a vehicle to showcase why people liked Stephen Jeffries as Evil Ed. Clearly, that's why he got the lead, that's why he's on the poster, but all this movie did was kind of just inadvertently show that he's not a leading guy. You don't give the funny side character of a horror movie the lead, and if you're going to, don't make him just play that same character but as the main character. It doesn't fucking work. Especially because this movie is like barely 90 minutes and it splits the focus between Hoax, Spike, and then it breaks those bits up for bits with the detective. I don't think Stephen Jeffries failed this movie, I think the movie failed him, and it's a damn shame because I think with some rewrites and a little more screen time, they could have gotten a good movie out of it with a good lead. Because again, the concept of a movie where Satan gives you powers over the phone for doing bad things is an interesting concept that uses something that at the time was current. Like, they totally misplayed this concept, and I think that's what pisses me off the most about this movie. Furthermore, the Spike character is like the secondary lead, and he's not exactly sympathetic either. He's kind of a dick and treats his cousin in a very patronizing way. Like, he's nice to him, but he's nice in the way that you're nice to your, like, special needs cousin. And as soon as Hoax acts out of line, Spike resorts to physical violence. It's these bad movies that actually make me upset, because it's like, you had a really good concept that had the potential to be something good, but it just didn't turn out that way. 976 Evil has pretty decent effects considering the budget. Stephen Jeffries, despite not looking the part, does play into what he was told to do well. The scenes scenes where people get hurt or killed are pretty solid, and it's a late 80s movie, so it's from that era where film looked the best it had ever looked. There is some good in this movie, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a good movie, and nobody here really benefited from it at all. Robert Englund's directorial career did not take off. Stephen Jeffries went on to do gay porn. Everyone else in this movie besides Robert Picardo didn't really do that much after. Patrick O'Brien appeared in a few movies in the late 80s and early 90s, and his final film role was the bad straight-to-video sequel to this movie. All in all, 976 Evil is just wasted potential for a film, and possibly wasted potential of a young actor, well, quote-unquote young. Because the whole idea of the hoax character being this good person who's just a little weird, repressed, and introverted is a good setup, and the idea that he's not a victim in the end because he gave into the prompts would be a lot better if they managed to maintain his sympathy for the majority of the film. But instead, it just kind of got stupid, they rushed everything, and yeah. They completely fumbled this movie. I think the funniest thing though is while I was thinking of this movie, while I was watching this movie, what came into my mind is that they could probably remake this concept and it would be even better in the modern day. Instead of a hotline, you have an app. You could just call it like Eviler or some shit. And every day the app prompts you to do some bad things. And at first they're just kind of minor bad things, and then they escalate more and more. And as they get worse, you get more power, but you also start to lose yourself to the demons. The general idea of a good person turning bad because of corruption is a standard trope for any story. And I personally think that somebody could revisit this idea and give it a modern tune-up, and they might actually be able to make a good thing out of it. The main reason I looked at 976 Evil on this channel is because it is adjacent to the Fright Night movies. The movie itself is even on the Fright Night wiki. But all in all, it's just another mid-budget 80s horror movie, and I can't say I'd recommend it unless you were a fan of the Evil Ed character in Fright Night, or if you're a fan of 80s horror. It's a movie with a good concept, but a bad team behind it who executed it very poorly. Not much more to say besides, yeah, they fucked this up, moving on. It's a unique concept, but it's executed in the most stereotypical way possible, and as a result we get a bland 90-minute kinda break-even movie where there are positives, but the positives are evenly weighed with the negatives. As for the sequel that Patrick O'Brien was in, I might check it out at some point, but that's not really on the important list right now. Anyway, that was 976 Evil. If you find that I'm saying 967 Evil, please comment in the comments with how many times I fucked that up. But as for the movie, check it out or don't, I don't care. And if you have seen it, let me know your thoughts on this movie in the comments. Until then, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Also, they didn't even give him like a catchphrase. He's not like, "You're so cool, Spike." Like, come on.
Where is he?
I don't know. Who are we waiting for?